All right, we are at the top of the hour. So hello everybody and welcome to the first NWA webinar of the new year, 2020. Holy moly. My name is Becca Mazer and I will be your host for today's webinar. A few logistics before we get started. All attendees will be kept on mute for the entirety of the talk, but we certainly encourage you to ask questions or send along comments to our speakers. But please do this using the questions GUI or the raise your hand feature on the GoToWebinar GUI, or ask your question on Twitter using the hashtag NWAWebinar. I will then read the questions and comments at the end of the presentation. You can also follow along with the presentation on Twitter using that same hashtag NWAWebinar or follow the NWA account at NWAS. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded for later viewing. I'm pleased to introduce our speakers for this month, Andy Hait and Laura Furgione, both whom are with the U.S. Census Bureau. They'll be stepping you through how to apply census data to operational meteorology. All right, Laura, I'll pass it along to you.
Thank you, Becca, and thanks to all of you who are attending this webinar. I'm very honored to introduce the topic on how to apply census data to operational meteorology, near and dear to our hearts, as we know that NWA is focused on operational meteorology. And even though I'm not in the Weather Service any longer, I still am quite passionate about operational meteorology and support your mission of protecting lives and property, as the National Weather Service mission is, and the great partners that we have across the weather enterprise. My role here now at the U.S. Census Bureau is the Chief Administrative Officer, and so that is more of an enterprise-wide role, and that means that, yes, we do other things the other 9 years of the decade. It's not just all about the decennial census, but with 2020 upon us, we have now a greater attention and focus on the decennial census. It is a once-a-decade population and housing count required by the U.S. Constitution and will occur on April 1st of 2020. Now, our first enumeration, though, actually happens on January 21st in Tooksuk Bay, Alaska. So back to Becca and my stomping grounds, if you will, where we started off with the National Weather Service. The information that's collected by the decennial census, the results are powerful, we like to say, and powerful meaning that they determine the number of seats for each state in the U.S. House of Representatives, and it's actually used to draw congressional and state legislative boundaries and districts. The data is also used to distribute more than $675 billion worth of federal funds annually. And we need trusted community leaders like yourself, the weather enterprise, and in particular the broadcasters. You all will be critical in getting the word out to ensure that everyone is counted once, only once, and in the right place. And that's where that apportionment count takes place. We understand where people are living and then how many seats will be designated to each state for the U.S. House of Representatives. So all that knowledge that we collect about people, places, and the economy, it's not just from the decennial census. We have more than 100 other surveys that we do around the year, and Andy Hait will talk a little bit more about that. But all that information is critical in helping emergency preparedness and evacuation planning. So that's where we continue to try to tie this information to the great work that you're doing in the weather enterprise. One thing that's important to know is how your community and the responses to the 2020 decennial census can affect disaster preparedness. So I think back to my days as the warning coordination meteorologist at the Morehead City office, and how when I came on board as the WCM, I needed to understand the demographics and the area that was in my area of responsibility. Now, we had tons of spotters, we had trained spotters, we had the contacts with the emergency managers, but that wasn't the full brunt of the demographics that was within my area of responsibility. My CWA had many hard to reach populations, and in the census, we call that hard to count populations, those vulnerable populations, and how can we reach them, not only before the storm, but ensuring that during the storm they get the information that they need to make important, often life-saving decisions. So with all that being said, again, we hope that you partner with us on the 2020 decennial census. There'll be more information about that. In fact, Andy and I will both be at the American Meteorological Society meeting doing some presentations in a booth similar to how we were at the NWA conference, if any of you saw us. And we're also here to help ensure that you understand how to access the information that we have in your planning, your preparedness, and your response to natural disasters. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Andy Hait, and he is our data king, and he's going to tell us again how to apply census data to operational meteorology. Thank you so much, and I'll be on the line listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura, for that wonderful introduction. Data King, boy, I think that's the first time I've been called a king. May go to my head in this brand new year. So again, my name is Andy Hait. I'm an economist here at the Census Bureau. And today I have two goals for my part of the presentation. First, I want to make you aware of some of the data resources that we have at Census that you may not be aware of. Laura mentioned that, of course, we conduct the population census every 10 years. But if I had $1 for every time someone asked me, I know what you do once every 10 years, what do you do the other 9? I would be retired by now. So I'm going to spend a few minutes in just a minute or so talking about some of those 130 or so programs that we conduct at Census. No, I'm not going to talk about all 130, just a few of them, sort of the key ones. Then I want to talk about 2 of our data tools that we have at the Census Bureau that I believe that you can use directly in your work. The first of these tools that I'm going to show is a tool called OnTheMap for emergency management. And I'm going to take a quick brief demo of OnTheMap EM to tell you what types of information are in that tool and how you can use that tool in your work. And then secondly, I'm going to show you a data tool that's near and dear to my heart, a tool called Census Business Builder. I'm actually the project lead for that data tool, and I'm going to be showing you all the regional analyst edition of Census Business Builder. This edition of CBB was originally designed specifically for chambers of commerce and other regional planning authorities, but when we began talking with FEMA about how they might be able to use Census Business Builder in their work, we realized that anyone who is concerned about population and businesses in a particularly impacted area where they'd want to design or build their own region, their own area of areas that the Census Bureau recognizes could use this tool. So that'll be the second tool I will show you all. To close this out, I'm going to quickly give you a preview of a website that is going to be debuting next week at the AMS conference. A data tool specifically, or a page specifically designed to allow weather forecasting offices to be able to go in and look at the demographic and business data specifically for their WFO. So we'll take a quick walk through there. So let's kind of get started here. Of course, as Laura already mentioned, we do more than just simply to count the U.S. population every 10 years. We conduct over 130 different citizen surveys. These include demographic programs like the decennial census, but it also includes a program called the American Community Survey, or the ACS. If you are already not using the ACS in your work, I would really, really recommend you doing it. It is a fabulous resource that provides annual statistics on demographics, socioeconomic, and housing characteristics of populations of areas. In addition to the ACS, we also conduct a number of business surveys, 58 to be exact. This is the area of the Census Bureau that I work in. It includes a census of governments that looks at the public sector, and an economic census that we do every 5 years that looks at the private sector businesses. So we have a lot of different data. Very quickly, the ACS provides a lot of information. Over 3.5 million households are surveyed every single year, and it informs about $675 billion worth of funding, covers 35 topics, and produces about 11 billion estimates, statistics every single year. The ACS provides these types of data. The slide here that you're seeing gives a brief summary of the types of information that are available from the American Community Survey. They include basic demographic data like age, race, and ethnicity, but it also includes socioeconomic information like educational attainment, marital status, disability status, veteran status, socioeconomic data like household income and educational attainment, and even housing-related information, like the number of owner versus renter-occupied housing units, house values, owner costs, and even things like the number of vehicles that are available to the household. I think as I kind of walk through these two data tools, you'll see how each of these types of variables can be very, very useful when you're trying to understand the impact to an area that is being affected by a particular weather event or a storm. If you think about a hurricane coming up the east coast of the U.S. and hitting counties in the Carolinas and coming up into Maryland, the impact to the population that live along those coastal areas varies widely based upon the demographics and the economics of those people who live in those areas. Some people are better able to handle or deal with a hurricane coming. They can leave because they have access to multiple vehicles to allow them to flee. If a hurricane were to hit an area where a large percentage of the population have no vehicle at their disposal, they rely on public transportation, then evacuating that area could be quite different. So the ACS has a lot of detailed information that you can use. This slide here gives you a little information about the levels of geography that are published in our business programs and economic and demographic programs at the Census Bureau. Down sort of the center of this chart, you can see the standard geographies like nations and states and counties, but you can also see that we publish data by place, which are cities, towns, villages, and boroughs, by congressional districts, and even detailed geographies like census tracts and block groups. The decennial census goes one step further than block group. It goes all the way down to the detailed block level data, but these geographies you're seeing here on the screen are ones that are covered by the American Community Survey. So you can see there's a lot of detailed information. The red highlighted geographies are the ones that we publish business data for, and you can see that they are a subset of all the geographies. The farthest we go down to on the business side are place level data and congressional district level data. We don't show data at census tracts or block groups in our business programs, primarily because of privacy. When you think about the ability for us to slice and dice the individual businesses down to the 6-digit NAICS code level and down below the county, it would be very easy to identify a single grocery store in a particular zip code or a singular gas station in a particular census tract. So because of that, we only break down the business data down to the place level. There is a little bit of zip code level data available. So talking about our economic programs, again, very briefly, those 58 surveys that I mentioned can be grouped into 3 broad categories. They include monthly surveys like the monthly economic indicators. Every evening or every month when you are sitting at home watching the evening news and the reporter comes on and says, the Commerce Department announced today that monthly sales of automobiles last month were X, those data actually come from the Census Bureau, from one of our economic indicator surveys. We also do annual programs that provide a little bit more detailed data, and then every 5 years, we finally do the economic census. 2017 is our latest economic census year. We started release of the 2017 economic census in September, and the local area data will start coming out actually on Thursday. So our webinar is really timely here today. So that was a very brief summary of the different types of data we have available. Let's now talk about where you can go to actually get these data and what you can do with it. This slide provides a brief summary of a couple of the key data tools that I do a lot of training on with our users. In the top right-hand corner is a screenshot of a data tool called QuickFacts. QuickFacts allows you to go in and select up to 7 different geographies. As you can see in the slide, I've selected the state of Maryland, Prince George's County, Maryland, and the Largo Census Designated Place, or Largo CDP, in the display. And it presents some selected information based upon the geography. So you can see I'm looking at some business data, but we also have demographic data available in QuickFacts. It is a great resource for being able to go in and actually look at the selected information by geography. It doesn't provide very much detail in terms of NAICS breakouts, but it does give you the sort of those broad totals. The second tool in the bottom right-hand corner is called My Congressional District. This is a tool that we built specifically for the congressional staffers to allow them to go in and look at specific demographic and business data for their congressional district. In this case, I've selected Maryland Congressional District number 4, and we're looking at some business information for the numbers of businesses located in that particular congressional district. The 3 tools or 4 tools that I have highlighted here on the slides are the ones that I'm going to quickly walk through. And the first one I want to talk about is a tool called OnTheMap for emergency management. I'm actually going to jump out of the PowerPoint slide now, but just to give you sort of a preview of what you're going to be seeing, this is the first tool that we're going to look at, which is OnTheMap for emergency management. This tool is updated every 4 to 6 hours. You can see I pulled this slide right before the holidays, but we'll be seeing a live version of it in just a second. And it includes some statistics on demographics and a little bit of workforce related data. The second tool that I'm going to talk about is Census Business Builder, and we're going to focus specifically on version 2.6 of the Regional Analyst Edition. The Regional Analyst Edition version 3.0 will actually be coming out at the end of this month or in early February, and it provides even more information. So let's kind of get out of the presentation here and let me get out and actually show you this thing live. So this is OnTheMap for emergency management as of this morning, as of today, January 6th. You can see on the map, you're seeing different shapes based upon whether it's a snow event. So all of these little pinkish snowflakes over here in the Pacific Northwest, a few snowflakes up in my old stomping ground in the Syracuse, New York area, where I went to school. The orange areas are all flooding events, and then there's a variety of other events in there too. If we had looked at this map a couple of weeks or months ago, you would have seen flames displayed on this map, which are fires. So Laura just said, what about Alaska? Alaska is there. You just need to kind of pan the map, and there's poor Alaska sitting up there in the corner. Laura just said thank you. So let me go back to the rest of the country. So when you click on one of these particular events, the list over here on the left-hand side refreshes, and it shows each of the federal disaster declarations that are available for that particular area. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this first one for disaster declaration 4418. And when I click on that, the application is going to automatically zoom in to that particular disaster declaration area. And now I can get some information about the demographics and the workforce of people that live and that work in that particular area. We can look at characteristics, we can look at data broken out by geography, and we can even look at data broken out by origination and destination. That is, looking at where people work versus where they live, and then the opposite. Folks that live in the Seattle area and work outside of Seattle versus live outside of Seattle and work in Seattle. Tool automatically presents some basic population data, so we can see that there's about 1.2 million people that live in that particular area that's affected by this particular event. We can then look at detailed information by the race of that population. Of that 1.2 million, a little over 1 million of them are white alone. We have data on race, and then you can see the wealth of other demographic type information that's available here. This is one that I find quite interesting, ability to speak English by age. This allows us to be able to go in and look at the population who don't speak English at home, or not well or not at all at home. So if I were sending people to respond to a disaster located in this area, knowing how many people don't speak English or maybe speak Spanish at home might be something that would be very important for me to know, because it would speak to how vulnerable that population is in that particular area. Similarly, we have data broken out by disability status, by poverty status, by age. So how many people that are over 65 and live alone in that particular area. These types of information are all available, and these data are all available from the American Community Survey. Here's information on the number of vehicles that are available. So in that particular affected area, Of the 474,000 households, occupied housing units in that particular area, 26,000 of them had no vehicle available. So if they had to evacuate this particular area right now, they would have to rely on some other mode of transportation other than their own particular vehicle. 130,000 or so have one vehicle available. So these are the types of information that are available in the OnTheMap application, OnTheMap for Emergency Management application. The data include information from the American Community Survey, but it also includes some decennial census data. So as you can see, this is the 2010 decennial census. Once we start releasing data for the 2020 decennial, that'll show up in this tool as well. And then finally, we have the workforce information for people that live in the event area versus that work in the event area. So if I choose work in the event area, I can now look at the number of workers that are in those people. About 394,000 workers that work in that particular area. This is their age breakout, and then this is breakouts by educational attainment, by earnings, by industry, race, ethnicity, and gender. So this is a great tool to understand the demographics and the workforce of areas that are currently being impacted by a disaster, by some type of event, whether that be a snowstorm or some other type of event. So when weather broadcasters are talking about a snow event in the Seattle area, they could say that this event is affecting this number of people, that this is the number of workers that work in the area that's being impacted by that particular event. So again, this is a great tool for understanding ongoing events. But if you wanted to go in and look at events that actually aren't occurring right now, but you want to understand what the impact might be if an event were to occur in a particular area, that's where the second tool that I want to show you comes in place, and that is our Census Business Builder tool. So from the main Census Bureau's homepage, if I go to Data Tools and Apps, then choose Census Business Builder from this long list of tools, I then come to the CBB homepage. This is the page that has all of our flyers and webinars and other types of materials about Census Business Builder. We're going to go ahead and click on the Regional Analyst Edition of Census Business Builder, and the application is now going to launch, and it's going to bring us to a page where we can go in and actually start the research for a region, for a particular area we're interested in. So sticking with the example that I was just looking at, we want to look at King County, Washington, and the application is now going to automatically zoom into King County, Washington, and it now can then show me the total population and the other data specifically for King County. So let me zoom out a little bit more so we can see a little bit more of it. So here's our main map. By default, the application automatically opens to the total population in King County, which is about 2.1 million. But Census Business Builder provides information from about 130 or 140 different data variables from about 9 different data programs. It includes demographic, socioeconomic, and housing data from the American Community Survey, some of those variables that we were looking at. So here's our age and race and ethnicity data. Here's some of our socioeconomic data like household income and educational attainment, and a variety of other types of data variables, disability status, employment status. Here's some of that housing data, some number of owner versus renter occupied housing units, vacancy rates, house values, owner costs, and rents. Here's some of our business data. So this is the number of total businesses that are in King County, Washington. And we have data not only on employer businesses, businesses with paid employees, but also what we call non-employer businesses. These are businesses with no paid employees, businesses that we typically think of as independent contractors or sole proprietors or independent consultants. These people, self-employed folks, if you will, often there are as many as 10 times more non-employer businesses in a particular industry and area than there are employer businesses. So both of them are available in this tool. We also have some key ratios like payroll per employment, understanding how much people in those areas earn. We have some data on businesses' quarterly data available from the quarterly Census of Employment and Wages. You notice that these lines are all lined out right now because we're looking at all sectors. But if we went in and chose a particular sector like manufacturing or retail trade, we could then look at quarterly data from the BLS QCEW. Here's some of that labor force data that we talked about before in the OnTheMap application: quarterly employment, hires, separations, job gain, job loss, things like that. We even have some third-party consumer spending data. So if you are researching the population that lives in King County and you wanted to know something about how much they spend on dining out or how much they spend on food, etc., we have those types of variables in there as well. And finally, this last menu option here is My Variables. The tool lets you upload your own data. This tool has been this feature has been very popular with some of our users who want to combine data that they have with the data that we have and mash that data up together in the same application. So we're sitting here looking at King County, but you may have noticed that in the upper left-hand corner, there's a menu that allows you to look at data not only by the county level, but also at the state, city, zip code, and even census tract levels. So if I zoom in some on King County, and I want to now look at the zip codes within King County. Here's population for the total of the county. I can now click on zip code, and now the application is going to refresh, and it's going to show me population information for every single zip code in this entire area. And you can see this cluster of higher zip code or higher population areas here, and then you have some higher populations here as well. You'll notice that we are using a very colorful 5-color map palette. To some cartographers, this is a blasphemy. So we have built in the ability to change the color palette. If you really don't like this 5-color palette, you can change the color palette to a more traditional dark to light sort of fade, with dark colors being high values and light colors being lower values. In Census Business Builder, you have a filter that allows me to go in and say, only show me the geographies on this map that meet certain criteria. So let's say I wanted to find all of the zip codes on this map that were low income, high disability status, and a high percentage of population over 65. So sort of an older, lower income, disabled, sort of at-risk population. I could go into the filter and actually add a new filter and filter on up to 7 variables at a time. Now, so far, we've been looking at data for this one county as a whole. But the Regional Analyst Edition, sort of one of its really main features, is the ability to build your own custom region. So let's say I wanted to build a region of King County and all of the counties that surround King County. The way I could do that is by clicking on Edit Region, and then either by clicking on each of these surrounding counties or by choosing one of the drawing tools, a rectangle, a circle, or a polygon, I could go ahead and select all of the geographies around King County. So let's draw a circle. I'm going to hold down my cursor, and I'm going to select all those areas that I'm interested in. The application is then going to build a list of all of those counties that touch that circle, that are fully inside or partially inside that circle. When I then say add them to my region, it's then going to be able to do that. It's now added them. I can now name this region. So let's just call this King, oops, if I can spell that right, King County area. And once I'm then done editing that particular region, the application is now going to build this consolidated area of all of those different areas. And what I can now do is I can now go in and generate a report, not only specifically for King County, which I can do by going to my dashboard and clicking on Create Report, but I can also create a region level report that then summarizes all of the population, all of the business data, all of that demographic data, all of the consumer spending data, and the other data variables that I just showed you for this consolidated area. Now, in this case, I built the region from a bunch of counties. but the tool does allow you to go in and actually build a region of any of these 5 levels of geography that are available in Census Business Builder. So for example, a colleague of mine, a person who I used to work here at the Census Bureau, now works for the state of Maryland, was interested in doing some research about all of the zip codes that border the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland. And they wanted to get a region built of every single zip code that touches the Chesapeake in the entire state of Maryland, and create a summary of how many people and how many businesses are in that combined area. He was able to go into Census Business Builder and basically select all of those regions, all of those zip codes that touch the Chesapeake Bay. And then when he created the region report for that large area that he had selected, the application then went out and it aggregated, it tabulated up all of the information that was available in Census Business Builder for that consolidated area. So you can see right now, it's now built a cover sheet for us. Here are all the counties that I just built into that region that I consolidated. And if I now scroll down, I can now see that there's 4.5 million people that live in that particular area. 6.3% of them are under 5. 77.9% of them are 18 and over. Each of these charts is fully interactive. So if I click on one of these variables, the chart will then refresh, and I can look at my demographic data, my socioeconomic and housing data, my businesses data. So in that area that I just built, there's 121,000 employer businesses and an additional 306,000 self-employed people in that particular area. So these resources are great because it allows you to look at the demographics and the economics of a particular custom-built, custom-designed area. Now, of course, in Census Business Builder, I can download the data in the report. I can download it as an Excel or as a CSV file. If I want to print the report, I can download it as a PDF. Now, one of the features we built into this tool is the ability to bookmark the report too. So if I copy this URL and I now want to share that URL with a colleague, I can then send them that, and when they click on that link, it'll bring them right back to Census Business Builder exactly where it was where I left them. That is also true with the map itself. So if I've now built this really nice map and I now want to share this map with a colleague, I again can copy this URL here at the very top of the page, if I can do that. And if I send that URL to a colleague, when they click on it, they will actually come right back into here. So let's talk a little bit about what's coming, what we're going to be debuting at next week's AMS conference. When Laura and I were at the conference in Huntsville, Alabama, one of your colleagues came up and said, you know, Andy, the Census Bureau has all this great data. We'd like to be able to look at that. We think it's valuable to our weather forecasting offices, but we would like to have each of our WFOs, each of our forecast offices pre-built for us. Is that something that you all can do? So in short, the answer, of course, is yes. So we are in the process of releasing a page that will be going live probably sometime this week, certainly in time for next week's conference, that will allow each of the National Weather Service's weather forecast offices to go in and actually get a pre-built report and map link for their particular WFO. So this is a preview of what that page is going to look like. I, just to kind of give you an idea, went in and pulled some information for the Miami CWA. So in that Miami city warning or county warning area, there's 6.5 million people, about 207,000 employer businesses, and about 946,000 self-employed people. Just to kind of give you an idea of what this would look like live, how this would actually work live, let me get back out to my browser again. And I want to quickly show you something that I pulled up. So here is the link for the map for the Seattle WFO. So this is one of these things that's going to appear in this new tool. When you click on the link for Seattle, the application is going to automatically go in and zoom you right in. Let me get here. Sorry about that. Let's do this again. Okay. Looks like it's being a little cranky here. Let's try it again here. Let's try it with a clean browser window. Okay. There we go. Okay. So what we did was we built a deep link directly into Census Business Builder, Regional Analyst Edition, with each of the counties that make up that CWA already pre-built for you. And so what we're hoping is that your offices could use this tool to not only look at the demographics and economics of the entire area. So for example, by looking at that Seattle CWA and by going to the report for the Seattle CWA, we could find out how many people are in that entire area. What's the distribution of those people based upon age and race and ethnicity, and all of the other types of demographic and business data that we already talked about. So in that entire area, there's a little over 5 million people that live in that area. The average household income for them is $95,478. There are 1.2 million owner-occupied housing units and 748,000 renter-occupied housing units. So this is the report for the combined area. But now I can now go in and actually zoom in on one of these particular counties and then look at the cities and the zip codes and even the census tracts within that area. So hopefully this gives you an idea of the types of resources that are available to you all. To close us out and then to do some questions, let me jump back out to my PowerPoint file here, and let's talk about a couple of other resources that are available to you. So in the two data tools that I just showed you, we have selected information from the American Community Survey, from our economic programs, and from a variety of other types of programs. And for many of you, having that selected information is sufficient. Those statistics that we've included in there are the key ones that you need, and that works great. But for some of you who need more data than what we simply have in Census Business Builder, or what we need in what we have in OnTheMap for emergency management, and you really need the full data set, historically we've had a number of different data tools at Census, including a tool called American Fact Finder that allows you to go in and access that data. American Fact Finder is actually in the process of being sunsetted, and it is being replaced with a brand new data tool called data.census.gov. This is going to be the only data tool that the economic census data are being released on, and it will be the only data tool, or the main data tool, that the decennial census data will also be released on. I would really encourage you all to check out this new website and to provide comments to us at the URL that I've provided, or the link I've provided here on the slide. I do also want to mention that for both OnTheMap for emergency management and for Census Business Builder Regional Analyst Edition, if you see something in either of those tools that you really like, or maybe something that you want to provide some comments on, Andy, I really like it that you included these data variables, but boy, it would be even better if you included these additional data variables, please let me know. We have sent feedback links in a lot of our data tools at census.gov, and at the very end of the presentation, you'll actually see my email address and phone number, and I'm obviously not shy, so you can send me your comments. For data.census.gov, we have some great educational materials, including things like data gems and webinars, and these are all stored in something called the Census Academy, which I've provided the link to as well. Now, as great as data.census.gov is for many of you, some of you, the real data nerds of you all, are going to be interested not just in being able to pull data via download, but actually connect your own dashboards, your own platforms, your own interactive charts into our database, where you're not having to actually download the data, but where your application actually dynamically links to our data and pulls in the information on the fly. That's actually the way that Census Business Builder works. All of the data that you just saw in CBB is actually not sitting live in Census Business Builder, it is pulled in dynamically using this last resource that I want to talk about, which is the Census Bureau's Data API. An API stands for Application Programming Interface. It's basically an online database that allows you to dynamically access and pull information that you need. You do need to request a key to access our API. You can see the button that I've included in the screenshot to request a key, but there is no charge for that key, and we do not throttle our users based upon their usage. To the best of my knowledge, there's only been 3 data users that we actually had to have a little discussion with because they were pulling millions of records every minute and said, there's probably a better way to be accessing our data than doing it that way. And we actually work with those developers. But these tools, these APIs are a great resource. When I first started working on this particular project, there were 47 data sets in our Census API. There's now 371. So we keep adding more and more information based upon customer feedback for the types of data that you're interested in. So to summarize us and then take some questions, the Census Bureau has an amazing wealth of data that you all can use to understand the demographics and economics of areas that you care about. The data tools I showed you on the map for emergency management provides easy access to some selected data for areas that are currently being impacted by a particular event. Census Business Builder Regional Analyst Edition provides some of those same demographic variables, but it also includes more business data than what is available in OnTheMap, and it allows you to go in and do sort of what-if analysis. If a hurricane were to come to the Chesapeake Bay and were to strike the city of Annapolis and the areas surrounding Annapolis, how many people would be impacted? How many businesses are in those impacted areas? And what types of businesses? Knowing that a large regional hospital is located in a particular impacted area versus other types of critical infrastructure businesses is information that you can get out of Census Business Builder. Data.census.gov is our new platform that provides access to the majority of almost all of our Census Bureau demographic and business data. Yes, there are some programs like the economic indicators that are currently not in data.census.gov, but most of those programs are available in the Census Bureau's Data API. So again, that's a great resource for those of you who are interested in sort of bulk access to these same types of information. So with that, I think we are actually done. Let me turn it back over to Laura so she can close us out, and then we can see about taking some questions.
Thanks, Andy. That was fabulous. Directly shows how the census information can be used in planning and even so dynamic. I'm excited for the WFO CWA website to go live. And also, we're working on a similar website for the broadcasters for their various DMAs. So more modifications to the site coming soon. And as Andy said, please, if you see anything that you would like changed, please let us know, and we can see if we can make that modification as well. So with that, Becca, I'm going to turn it back to you to see if there are any questions for Andy or myself, and hopefully that was informative for you all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andy and Laura. That was a fantastic presentation. And, you know, we data nerds, we certainly love looking at data. So I'm sure, and especially as operational meteorologists, it's really important to know how to tailor our weather information to our customers. So I really believe that this data will be these data will be invaluable to our weather forecast operations in the years to come. So thank you for sharing this. We do have a couple of questions, so we'll start off right now with first one is, where does the weather data come from that goes on the map for emergency managers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as you might have noticed, and let me jump back over to that slide, the OnTheMap for emergency management is actually built from a variety of different feeds. We pull data not only from the National Weather Service, but also from the Interior Department and from 6 other agencies. I don't actually have the list here on the slide, but we pull in those dynamic feeds in, and we update this map every 4 to 6 hours based upon those dynamic feeds.
Okay, great. Next question is, let's see here. Oh, yeah, how will we know when the NWS CWA page goes live? And thanks for a great presentation and service.
Well, it'll certainly be live, fingers and toes crossed, in time for our conference next week. So certainly by Mondays, that's when the sort of the launch of the page is going to be available. If you would like to contact me sometime during this week, here's my email address here at the end of the presentation. And I think the site will actually be going live either today or tomorrow. I was hoping it was going to be ready today, and unfortunately it wasn't quite ready in time for the webinar. Just Murphy's Law, right? But yeah, it'll certainly be ready by next week.
And as sort of a follow-up, you mentioned that there will be similar pages developed for, I'm not exactly sure what the term is in the broadcast world, but that they're viewing areas. It's going to be basically the same sort of makeup as what you have for CWA, but for the various, I think you call them DMAs. Forgive me for not understanding the broadcaster lingo. I apologize. So it's going to be very similar to what a CWA page will look like, but for the DMAs?
Absolutely. So when you think about any of sort of these different types of regions, any region, and just to let you know, it's a digital media area is what DMA stands for. Laura just had to write that down for me, and so I didn't know it either, so that makes 2 of us. But in any of these sort of custom regions where the pieces of the regions are census recognized geographies, the ability to kind of build a custom region is just simply a process of just sort of identifying the pieces and assembling them together. That's one of the things when we built Census Business Builder Regional Analyst Edition, it was originally built for chambers of commerce. When you think about a chamber of commerce, they often represent only a single city or a single county, but increasingly they actually are representing more than one county or more than one city, or even in the case of cities like Chicago, the city of Chicago is actually broken into 3 different areas, different chambers of commerce, North, Central, and South Chicago, that represent their piece of the city. So as long as the component pieces that make up that custom region are geographies that the Census Bureau recognizes, we realize that we can kind of pre-build those regions for you, so you don't have to go through the process of doing that. I can tell you from experience, when I was building this website, all the links for this website, some of the weather forecast offices, the WFOs that you all recognize, are nice and small, but then I got to the Atlanta WFO and had cardiac arrest when I saw that it was like 60-something or 90-something. Lord, just correct me, 92, that's correct. 92 counties make up the Atlanta WFO. Having to expect someone to build that manually themselves would be kind of cruel and unusual punishment. So we decided to kind of build them for you at a time. So any custom geography, as long as it recognizes or represents real census recognized geographies like counties or cities or zip codes or tracts, we can build a custom geography from that.
That's excellent. Yeah, I can't even imagine trying to build something like that for 92 counties. Wow. But that is an excellent service you guys provide. So thank you very much. Will this tool, the WFO CWA tool, be available for students or just only for the NWS offices? So essentially, is it going to be publicly available to anybody, or is it just going to be for the NWS offices?
It's going to be available to anybody. All the resources we talked about today are available on our main Census Bureau's website, and that site is accessible to anybody for no charge. Sort of a funny story, every year we present at the Select USA Investment Summit, which is a large conference that the Department of Commerce puts on each year here in the DC area. That summit attracts investors from foreign countries and matches them up, sort of a matchmaking system with local communities that are interested in attracting certain types of businesses to move there. Every single year that I presented at that conference, I've had international investors come to me and ask about these resources that are available. And they always say, well, I'm not a U.S. citizen, so do I have to pay for this? And the answer is no. Everything that we have at the Census Bureau, with very few exceptions, is available for free. Our argument is you already paid for it with your taxes, so why would we charge you for it again? So yeah, everything we just talked about is available to everybody. And in fact, a lot of these data tools were built specifically for a certain type of user, but then we found out that they were useful to a much broader audience that maybe has a different reason to use the data, but the process they're going through of accessing that information is the exact same process. Census Business Builder, for example, I mentioned the Chamber of Commerce versus weather folks now. We also have a small business edition that was designed specifically for entrepreneurs that grant writers are now using. So to us, it's all about making our data accessible in a user-friendly kind of a way to an audience with a variety of needs. Did you have any other questions?
Oh, sorry, I had myself on mute. Ha!
Okay.
I apologize for that. I do have one more question related to the CWA maps. Are there any one-pager or two-pager handouts available for the on the map and or the site with all the stats on the CWA maps? They could see this coming up with some classes that are going to be taught, and it would be great to have a quick guide to share.
Sure. So let me actually show you on the main Census Business Builder homepage. Let me find that here. I had that queued up here. Here we are. So on the main Census Business Builder homepage, in addition to the links to the two editions of Census Business Builder, the Small Business Edition and the Regional Analyst Edition, there's also an overview page that includes flyers that provide a simple overview of those two applications. There's some instructional flyers, so for some of the features of CBB that are a little bit more complicated, we have flyers. So for example, how to upload your own data into CBB. There's actually a flyer here. We try to build the tool to be as user-friendly as possible, where you wouldn't need instructions, but I think everybody probably needs some instructions sometimes, so we've included that here. And we have some links to some recorded webinars that we've done over the years that users can access. I didn't mention it before, but both of these two tools are enabled or actually optimized not only for desktop application, but also for mobile devices. Some of the functionality will look a little bit different on a mobile device, but both OnTheMap for Emergency Management and Census Business Builder are accessible on both a mobile device and a desktop type of app platform. We know how much emergency managers rely on their mobile devices and entrepreneurs, and so we wanted to make sure it was available in both. So yeah, the materials are all available. If anybody's interested in getting some more sort of tailored training materials that we've done for other classes that I've taught, please feel free to contact me.
Great. One last question, and I think we've already answered this, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Will this info be available to the Red Cross if requested?
It is already available to the Red Cross. We've got actually a number of other agencies that have now incorporated Census Business Builder and these other tools, as well as our data, into their work. In fact, right before I came downstairs to do this webinar today, I was talking with a gentleman from an agency that is responsible for looking at issues along the border between the U.S. and Mexico for the 4 states that have counties that border Mexico, and their agency are now using Census Business Builder in their work because it allows them to look at the demographics and the businesses that are in those border counties when they're doing their analysis of the needs of people that live there and that work there. So yeah, I'm really happy when I hear about these other state and local governments and federal government agencies that are using CBB.
Excellent. Thank you so much for answering all of those questions. They were wonderful questions. And thanks for taking the time to share all of this information with us, the NWA. So yeah, thank you, Andy and Laura, for a wonderful presentation and all of these amazing resources that are just going to benefit the weather enterprise in so many different ways. And not just the weather enterprise, but just the United States as a country. So thank you so much for all of this. Any final thoughts before we end?
No, I just want to say thank you again for all of you for taking time out of your busy days to attend. Laura?
Nothing left here, Becca and all. Appreciate your time. I saw Trevor and others were doing lots of tweeting, so thanks so much for all the work you guys do voluntarily here for the NWA, and appreciate your time today. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Trevor Boucher and Hannah Strong for tweeting today. So thank you very much for your work here in the NWA. And for those in the audience, follow up with Laura and Andy at the AMS conference if you will be attending that next week. Go check out their presentation and ask any follow-up questions that you have. I'm sure they would very much so entertain your additional questions or comments. So once again, thanks for attending. That's all we have for now. Stay tuned to the NWA newsletter and social media feeds for details on the next webinar. Thanks again, and take care, everybody. Bye-bye.